Hey Rainicorns, it's Ellie here, and I am with my dad. Alright, so today is Real Talk with Dad. And so you guys get to ask him any questions you would like to know about different things as far as leadership and community building. You can ask from a masculine perspective, or you could be a lady and still ask questions too. So we're going to open up the Q&A box, and of course y'all can ask in the comments, but it's best to go ahead and use the Q&A box. So yeah, what y'all want to know? You can introduce yourself and what different things that you would like to speak on.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Daryl Hatley. I was invited. I'm a guest today, so I'm really here to answer, any questions, questions that Tiara, my daughter, may have that we definitely would like to share.
So a lot of the things that seems new, like new information to you all, some people may call it new age or spiritual. My dad's known a lot about it for a long time, and then even when it comes to things like community building projects, he knows about people who arrange things, and he also has projects himself, to where I know sometimes I know that my approach is a little bit different when I say certain things, and it may seem kind of out there when I describe things. The reason that it's not so much just an out there thought process is very grounded in me being logical about the fact that, okay, I've seen and observed other people do these things and be able to do it in an organized fashion, so I would like to participate as well. So B. Willie South said, hi, Willie from Cali is here. So yeah.
Hello. Yes. Okay, on that subject of, let's say, community building, if you look back through the history of the, African American or the descendants of enslaved people in America, which were mostly Africans, our approach to community building, I would say, isn't the same as most, what we would say, other cultures, because we had to do it in a different fashion. Coming from that perspective, over the years, there's been a development of how our communities were developed. We can start from when those who were enslaved, how they managed to form the community based off of that era. That era where those who were seeking freedom, freedom in mind, freedom in thought, freedom physically, emotionally, there had to be a building of the minds, a coming together of the minds. And as we know, those of us who are beneficiaries, I would say, of that earlier community building, it brings us to the point where we are today. And today is it's different than it was. It's 10 years ago. It's different than it was 20 years ago. Different than it was even 30 years ago. There's a lot of organizations that have come, a lot of organizations that have gone. But during those different time periods, there was this sense of community building, the leadership, those who took on the challenge of that time. And in most cases, community building went without a financial, in most cases, there wasn't you didn't do it based on your getting rich doing it, so to speak, during that time. Let's say during the civil rights era. We'll start at the civil rights era. well, most of us know about Dr. Martin Luther King, for example. Well, the, during that time, those who organized in the community, those who worked in the community, um, as far as them becoming well off or rich, so to speak, or what have you, that wasn't the idea. Uh, but today, let's look at today. We'll fast forward to today. Those efforts to build community, you can actually financially, it can be done today. The resources are more available. Information is more attainable as it was back, even let's say 30 years ago, when the internet was actually just getting started. I can recall going to college, and during that time, the internet was really just becoming, getting going. But I think back in like 1991, I guess who they called, the one that they say is the father of the World Wide Web, Barnes-Lee. As this technology was being developed, I was actually myself a student going, doing my associate degree in a business, as well as a paralegal degree. So when we was doing our research back in that day, it was going to the library, where you had to go through the books, you had to do your research, doing different, using different researching methods back then, cross-reference. All of this was done through the library. The ready available information was there. However, it wasn't made really to the mainstream. I think government may have had more. Matter of fact, government had the access to it, but it was still under this developmental stage. So today, the ability to get information out is more readily available than it was then. So we embark on the difference in how organizing and those who provided leadership in the communities, how they actually, got the word out. A lot of times you had to go to a certain place, a building, so to speak. Whereas today, it was limited as far as the media is concerned. Back then, the media was really controlled by a very few. It's somewhat still like that to a degree. However, there's this ability that we can access different platforms. So you got quite a few different platforms that you can go to get your word out, provide the information necessary in order to build in the community. And it takes planning, which is one of the big things. No matter how we approach it, no matter how much, how quick you can disseminate information, there has to be a planning process involved. To today, I do work in the community. I work with the youth in the building process. We invest in housing. I work with other groups that also invest in building commercial properties. So our effort today is, like I said, it's different, but all in all, it's the same, because at the end we're trying to provide a better way for those of us who are here today. We can look back and learn lessons from the past. And as the saying goes, history is best qualified to reward our research. So when you take that and you build on it and you continue to build on, you would see that even though back in the civil rights movement, for example, you had different organizations who came together, those that did come together, SNCC, CORE, the Southern Leadership Conference. It was just, it was different, but still pretty much the same. What we're faced with today is how do those who have access to the information able to disseminate the information quicker than in the past? How do you use it in a way that this community can evolve? So we're always looking at evolvement, the ability to learn different languages. There was a time where, as those who were enslaved weren't allowed to read or write or even have a thought, to a degree. Thoughts came, but to actually communicate. So we find that communication today is vitally important. So what do we do as it relates to the future? How do we continue to educate the children? Because the children are the future, and that's a pretty much quick breakdown. But leadership, it's a lot of different styles of leadership. Some lead, according to their makeup of who they are. Some, in other ways, different tact that's used. So, my experience of being under leadership, what I learned, to be a good leader, you have to be a good follower. In being a good follower, you understand what you learn how to lead. So understanding leadership is a thing that is developed with time. So you never know when you may be called on to provide leadership. In most cases, we're natural, and I always say we're natural in our leadership. And you say, well, why would I say that? When you look at the human being, or any birth, though anything that's dealing with actual birth, you find that even the conception, and we'll keep this to the human being, the conception process starts through the head. And you say, well, what do you mean by that? Even when the male and female, they have intercourse, well, there's this process that it's a science that the male produces the sperm, which has a head that fertilizes the egg. Well, once the egg is fertilized, then there's this process of the development of the body within the womb of the female. So once the female goes through once the development of the child goes through this development, then it's time for birth. The natural process is for the child to be born with the head coming out first. So once the child comes out, the head is first, and then the baby begins to develop from that stage. Well, the next thing that the baby does, once it begins to get around, crawl, the head is out first. And once that happens, the child begins to walk. The first thing that's on top is the head. So this is a natural process that we all have. It's understanding it and utilizing it for the betterment of mankind. We have a lot of different cultures, ethnic groups, or what have you. But all in all, we're just at a point where we, as African Americans or descendants of enslaved people in America, are now in a position to provide leadership to the world.
I'll read this real quick. So we have a comment from Young T Money 19. He said, "Peace, try from Florida, Seminole Nation. I want to do community building and establish a nation." And that's all the comments we got.
Okay, yeah, and it comes with in that process, you have a wide variety of things that you do want to understand. In community building, there's a governance. What's going to govern this community? How would it be governed? That's a part of the leadership. Understanding the building process. We've had people, African Americans, blacks, all over the world, who have developed civilizations. We were the first to develop civilization, according to history and research, coming out of Africa. Well, so civilization and the development of civilization didn't just start, 400 years ago here in America. It's been here. And when you do your research, when you study even the thing of language, when you study the thing of calculations, there were those building communities, thousands of years ago, who understood geometry, algebra, calculus. What was used as the first means of calculations? It was our actual physical selves. We could just look at our own faculties, and we could say the number system. When we count our fingers, we got 10. Fingers. 4 fingers, 2 thumbs, as they say. But it comes up to 10. So from these natural things, we're able to realize how we're able to build from just our natural selves, and the dynamics of our inner beings. How does that work? How does the spiritual system tie in with our physical selves? It's quite a bit of difference that we do utilize in order to do community building. You do want to know how to provide shelter. You do want to know how to provide food. You do want to know how to live a holistic life. All of it isn't. In some cases, it may not be practical, but it is a way. It is a way, a vision that many have. So but based on our society, based on how we're governed, it may not be really available, but you have to continue to bring these things together. You bring them together bit by bit. It's a daily work, but it's the nation as a whole is one nation, but within that nation there's other nations of people who live according to the laws of their governance.
So, like in the home, how would you say that from your perspective things should be run? Because you mentioned in the grand scheme of things, of course, shelter, food, and living a holistic life. So for the individual, how should they go about managing their inside, their home, the tribes, the nations that make up the one nation?
Well, what we're looking at when it comes to that, and I like to refer back, uh, to through our history. You do have the makeup of the male and the female, and it's a difference in our physical ability, which means a lot because physically, in most cases, a man or a male is able to is stronger. It's just one of those dynamics that we have no control over. As far as as far as what I know. So you would say that if mankind developed long before technology, there had to be someone who took care of the let's say when you go out when the male had to go out and actually hunt. Well, the female had to be nourish the children. So in some cases it may have worked together, but in most parts it's where the male back then was able to provide through working, getting out, actually conquering the land, so to speak. So to me it was more of a process that we as human beings, male and female, we have differences. So in order for one to play their role, they have to accept their role. A man being a provider, okay? Well, the female or the male being a provider, the female is also a provider, but it's in different degrees. If back then the male had to go out, do the hunting, do the fishing, do the crops, cut the trees and build the houses, but it was physically demanding. And as we know, the male and the female are different physically, so the demand at that time was what it was. So we fast forward to today. Do we change that, or do we understand our role? There's different. Today it's somewhat different. What role do the male play today, as opposed to the role that the female play today? Both still, there's a need for there to be a provider. There's a need for there to be a caretaker. How does these things work today? And that seems to be a struggle for those who really don't know, or who hadn't taken the time out to understand the history of how mankind developed. So leadership, even in our history as as black people, or what have you, there was always a leadership where the female was actually through our history had provided leadership. So then we get into this thing called the mind. Is the mind of the male greater than the mind of the female? Absolutely not. You say, well, why would you say that? Well, the structure of society did take on this what we would call male chauvinistic approach, where the male was always seen to be the one that's in leadership role or had the greater mind. But in actuality, the male and the female is both equal in the mind. So a female's mind can be developed to do great things. We've seen the leadership from the female that has changed the course of history. Some, may see it another way, but we have, plenty of examples of that has taken place. One that I always, like to look at was Harriet Tubman. Well, her leadership, that's leadership. That's documented, proven leadership from a female, where she had more courage than a lot of males of her time. She did greater work than a lot of males of her time. You have females who develop even when it comes to homeschooling, things like that. It was the female that provided the leadership in that role. It wasn't the male that was saying, I'm going to raise the child, I'm going to teach my child. No, it was the female. So now we see that, things like that are more accepted today than they may have been in the past. But the female gets a lot of credit for providing a lot of leadership in a lot of areas. So it's a coming together of the mind and the role that individuals may play. So, we could go on and on about it. There's, different schools of thoughts about it. But pretty much coming from, a perspective of our ancestry, we'll find that the female provided great leadership for the clan, for the tribe, or what have you. But wisdom has always been at the end is this thing of wisdom. Wisdom does come with time. We have great technology today. It doesn't replace wisdom. Okay, wisdom is a thing that is developed over a period of time. Geniusy is something that is a gift that a lot of times we're given with, but even in that, it doesn't replace wisdom.
Okay. So if y'all have any questions, y'all can use the question box with it's the circle with the little question mark bar in it, and your question will be displayed. You just came in. This person has been introduced, so you can kind of just come in. But this is my dad, and I see. And so I appreciate you asking, though. Truth hurts. So if you have any other questions, put them in the question box, and then they'll be displayed, and he can answer them. So we're coming from the context of, like he just spoke on, wisdom. He has the wisdom, knowledge, and information on things concerning leadership and community building. And so we're going through things that he has experienced, and he's also speaking on the history of these things even before he experienced them himself. And so I wanted to ask, okay, Truth Hurts said, nice to meet you, OG.
Yes.
And so I was going to ask you, your recent trip, how that affected you and what you would like to share as far as knowledge goes, like knowing like our heritage. You have spoken on a couple of things, our heritage, how other people perceive us, and how we should really perceive ourselves, and different things of that caliber.
Well, speaking on taking the trip, I went to England. One of the things that stood out to me was my visit to York, and I had back in the 90s I had did studies and what have you. You're trying to understand the difference in our what developed in religion, so to speak. So I got a chance to see one of the statues that kind of like, I was like, wow. And it wowed me because there was the Roman Empire. That some may be familiar with the Roman Empire. Well, the Roman Empire at one point was headed by Constantine. This leader of the Romans actually um, played a very critical role in how we today in America understand Christianity, for example. Before those people in that area had really accepted Christianity, there was another form of Christianity, a more orthodox, what we would call Orthodox Christianity. The Coptic, it was, the Coptic Church is what it was. At this point, Constantine was one of the first ones who had what they call the council in the development of the Nicene Creed. Well, this council developed how would Christians, how they would pledge their faith and their belief in the religion of Christianity, keeping in mind that Christianity hadn't always been like it may be viewed in America. It was viewed a little different in that part of the world, but it changed over time. Whereas, before there was this breakdown of the difference in, like some would say, the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Before you pledged, or you said that, God was viewed as one. But over a period of time, it changed. And if you study, or if you ever get a chance to study Constantine, you will see how these meetings that was held ever so often changed how the forms of religion, as far as Christianity was viewed, and how coming from that area to America, how we actually, developed. It was the development of a whole new, different type of belief of Christianity. But if you go back and you study the history long before that, you will find that Christianity was never taught exactly the same over the course of time. We're talking over 2,000 years ago. But it was during the 350 BC AD, around the 350 AD, when this new council decided that to be a Christian, you must proclaim the faith that there's a Father, the Son, and as it went on, it changed to where even Mary was the Father of God. These things were given through this council, through different councils over time. Well, by time it developed, and we come to the New World, as America was called, there was a whole different understanding of it. So for me, it was like, wow, to go to an area and see how, because when I was born, I was, born Christian, and I, went to church and what have you. The whole thing that those of us who, back in the 60s, 70s, how we, that's just how it was. But when you studied, as I got older, I studied the history of how these things developed. So you learn that all in all, even though it may be said that in order to be a Christian, you had to, pronounce that, your belief and your faith in the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, so to speak. But before that, the Christians or the Coptic Church, that wasn't their actual faith that called it that in order to be considered Christian. So Christianity in an Orthodox state is quite different than the Christianity as we know it today. So to see where it started, how the changes and who was behind it, and how the Roman Empire influenced Christianity. We get into the Catholic Church and so on and so forth, which takes us to a whole nother dialogue. But it was intriguing to me because it was my first visit to England, but it was an experience of going to areas that we never relate when you talk about even New York, for example. So when I was in Europe, kind of understand that New York was named after York. Well, this was the seat of the Roman Empire. It was the seat of Constantine, who ruled the Roman Empire. So, history, whether it's directly tied to us or indirectly, it does have its effect. So, that's kind of in a nutshell. We can go, farther and farther in that conversation. There's different schools of thoughts, theologians who may differ.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's it is what it is.
And I recognize and realize why you were speaking in the way you were speaking about that. You were using that as an example of what exactly it is to travel afar and get a comprehension of something that we have a limited view of in this particular country, and that's the reason you use it as an example. And so I noticed during that time period somebody had some comments. Now, I would like to address what this person said because I acknowledge them as an individual, their opinions, their thoughts. At the same time, this is what it means to listen with context. Originally, my dad said, in order to be a good leader, you have to be a good follower. So if you were following in conversation to the fullest extent of what he was saying and communicating and relaying, you would see that this is not a debate. This is not something of whether you think something is right or wrong. He was using something as an example to show the limited view of the Afro-American here, because he got to go to another country. Not only was it another country, it's the country that this one was based off of. So I'm going to acknowledge this person and what they said and just kind of bring it back to what this conversation is, and remind y'all, if you would like to ask him any questions about the topic at hand, which is leadership and community building, you can do so. This is not something to bicker about, go back and forth about particular beliefs. He was making an example of something that happened on his trip abroad. So Buganda said the Romans prayed to the real gods, which is us, the so-called blacks. There's no such thing as Jesus Christ. The letter J is only 400 years old, so there couldn't have been no man named. Jesus Christ never ever walked this earth. So whatever your opinions are, that is, I'm not going to invalidate your opinions and your beliefs. The fact of the matter is that was not the point of what he was saying. The point that my dad was saying was there's a difference between what we know as Black Americans about Christianity, and there's a difference between what English people know about Christianity, and their history is different based on the fact that certain things were born there, certain belief systems were born there, and he got to experience that firsthand, going to the museums, going to see statues, going to see these artifacts, and going to see these landmarks, versus just kind of being taught about it in school from the limits of a history book or a textbook. So always remember to listen with context, and everything's not a debate. People are not coming at you, and this is a learning experience, okay? Sharp as a dart. Okay, you originally came and said you two a couple. All right, and then you said, how you doing, Pops?
All right.
Yeah. And then Buganda said, correct, no harm to anyone. My love is just wisdom to all in the group. Okay, cool. Just remember, listen with context, all right? This is not a debate. This is not anything that we're being combated over. It's about, if you have any questions about how to apply this knowledge to your life. They say knowledge is power. Applied knowledge and wisdom, like he said earlier, is the power versus, okay, so even think about it. How did he get the opportunity to go abroad? Is that often that our people get to go abroad to different countries, especially things like England or visiting York, learning that the old York actually is old York and how we got to New York. Okay, focus on what actually you can apply to your life and how you can do things, because if you don't profess Christianity, that's nobody's business. What does that have to do with your community building though? How can you apply that? They say, I don't know the phrase. I don't know if you know the phrase. A traveled man is experienced in his ways. It's something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
But just having that you know what I'm talking about?
Well, I'm not on that one. You know, I'm not up to on that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is one phrase where basically when you travel, you gain more experience and it changes your mindset of things. Whereas a lot of our people, we have the internet now, but even I recognize that the internet is still limiting into your own thought bubble in your own space because of algorithms. Whereas if you go to a different location, you have no choice but to observe from the perspective of the local person when you're being a tourist. So, despite having the internet, a lot of our people stay in the same communities, in the same locations, and share the same thought processes as individuals for their entire lives. A lot of, literally, your entire life, it'll be from age 0, newborn, all the way to 80, staying in the same neighborhood, where some people do go out. They may move from the inner city to the suburbs. That's better. Some people may move to outer parts of the county, to another county, to a different part of the state, and some people to a different state. That's great. However, you have to really realize the magnitude of what was said. He went to a different country. He went overseas. Not only did he just go overseas to some random place, he went overseas to where the origin of this country is, which was based in Christianity. There's a reason to learn the history of it. There's a reason that he made the points he made, going back United States, going back England, going back York, going back Constantine Roman Empire. You have to follow the timelines of the reason that he was making the points he was making, and his perspective got to be in a way solidified, in a way enhanced, in a way just enlightened even more based off that experience.
Yeah. See, one thing about knowing, there's two ways of knowing things. One is through concept, through someone else's experience. Someone else experienced something. You read about it, you hear about it, and you can know from that perspective. Another way is experience. You can actually experience, and you can know from that perspective. So from those two ways of knowing, we develop our understanding. And as I was sharing that, I had studied. I read the books. Read the history. But what ties it in is that I'm in America, right? Well, where do America's charter come from? Who chartered America? Well, England. If I'm not mistaken. So we have a lot in America, as even though we a lot of us African Americans, but it doesn't take away that we're governed under the charters that was given to us through England, despite the different other things that took place afterwards, the establishment of where we are. So yeah, I had a concept, but I had never been to England. So what it done for me is just, so I got this experience to say that, wow, this is, quite different. Well, why do those Africans in America differ from the Africans in England? what was the difference in the type of slavery that took place in America and the type of slavery that took place in England. But these was two different types of slave systems. So you meet people who think differently, even though they're Africans. That was a part of the Middle Passage, the trade of African people. So, it's one of those things that we always, the thing is to continue to grow. There's never a time where you stop learning. There's never a time that you stop experiencing. There's always this effort to continue to grow, to continue to experience. So that was just me sharing from my perspective of how my experience and growth spiritually, and there's a difference between spirituality and religion. You gotta, millions of people that get up or that practice some form of religion, but probably couldn't even tell you what the definition of religion is, and couldn't separate religion from spirituality. So there's a whole lot of differences that we encounter over time, and that's basically what I my point of view as far as that part of my experience was.
Okay. I was trying to find the quote. I couldn't find it. But Buganda said, "I got you," as far as like that response, and Sharp as a Dart said, "Right and exact," and then Willie said, "I see why a lot of Prince Hall Mason traveling a lot." And then V, that nigga said, "Knowledge is key and keys open doors." Sharp as a Dart said, I didn't think y'all could hear that outside. That's loud if you could hear that. And then V, that nigga said, "Real talk." And so again, I would like to emphasize, applied knowledge is the power. Applied wisdom is the actual power. That's the key that opens the door, because you can have the key. It don't matter if you have the key. You got to use it and you got to open the door. Real quick, Sharp as a Dart said, "I believe that the true religion is man taking care of his family." But that's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah. And that was one of the first, if we had to look at it, that was, you say, well, religion, that was the first step, man understanding who he is, know thyself and be thyself. We've heard that phrase over the years. Providing, it's what the Creator does for us. We ask for nothing, but the Creator gives us everything.
Yep. And so, yeah, I see, like, y'all, I know that it's a great love for the conversation piece when it comes to things like spirituality and religion. I know y'all love that. At the same time, listen, y'all be contacting me and asking me certain questions. This is the opportunity to go ahead and get your questions answered with someone who has already had the experience. For myself, I know that I'm limited in my actual experience with that. I have experience with entrepreneurship, working with my dad. I very, very early on, even working with my mom too, but with my dad, it was more structured in certain things where we're traveling to different cities and different states, and I'm practicing and learning applicable skills like photography. I'm also learning sales. I'm learning communication skills. So I'm a young teenager speaking with adult people, making my own money, and being able to communicate, hey, I have a service, I have a product that you could use, and you can exchange, do an energy exchange. That's what currency is. It's an energy exchange in order to get that service. And so the list goes on. And this is what also goes into, he spoke on homeschooling earlier. It's not just like having a chalkboard and a lady with a ruler is not school. That is how people have to structure things in classrooms. When it comes to homeschooling, that is what homeschooling is learning life skills from that early age and then applying them into your actual life as an adult person. So when you learn to shift your perspective on things, and then you're able to do things with your community together instead of, the internet is the internet. I get it. People like to be in comment sections and say things on the internet, but think about it. We have all these people: Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, Martin Luther King. These people were outside. They were doing things. They were gathering people together, giving people things, going into politics. Are you afraid to go into town hall meetings? I used to work with government officials, and I would sit in the town hall meetings. And what was I doing? Using photography, the skill that I learned as a child, and that opened up doors for me. So that applied knowledge got me into opportunities where I was able to observe someone getting the key to the city. I was able to observe different political figures give certain speeches. I was able to see certain people who work around politics. They're not exactly politicians, but they work with politicians to implement certain infrastructure. Okay, so I have the experience of observation. He has the experience of groundwork and the actual structure. So I open the opportunity for you guys.
Yeah, it's leadership. We get to talking about vision. What's your vision? In a lot of cases, you start off in school. Let's just keep it basic. You start off school, elementary. When I finished the elementary, I finished 6th grade or whatever you want to call it, 6th grade. Then you go to middle school. It may differ depending on what area you're in. Then you go to high school. So you already are, in most cases we are exemplifying leadership just to yourself. You're one of the first that you have to show that you have a vision. So once you're able to continue to reach your goals, reach your visions, then you're exemplifying leadership. Now, let's say that it's time to, you reach this certain point, you graduated high school, or you maybe not even, graduated high school. You just have this ideal. We have a lot of people who are just plain geniuses. They're gifted. And those people are able to provide a leadership that a lot of times you never know about. I grew up in a community with a gentleman who, this had to be the late 1970s, maybe middle set 1970s, even 80s. Well, I met him, or I got a chance to see him in the early 80s. This gentleman, he had already built his own car. He built the first aluminum car. He took different, scraps and what have you, and actually built the car. This car was one of the first electrical cars that there were. He didn't need gas. It ran off batteries. Well, as in the past, those skills were taken and they were used, and now today we see electrical vehicles running off batteries. And so, well, this had been done. And I'm not just making this up. There's documented proof that this gentleman was a true leader. But who get the credit, is a different story. So we have always, as blacks, provided leadership. Now coming together to build a society that we can, live holistically, that we can live peacefully, that we can really enjoy the land, so to speak. That's going to be done by, by this generation and future generations to come. There was no intent for us to be here today so that in communicating the way that we're communicating. That just wasn't a part of the plan. But it was the leadership of those before us who has us where we are now. And it's going to be the leadership of those to come that's going to take it further. So it's not all doom and gloom. We have our challenges. We had our challenges. We have our challenges. There's going to be even more challenges to come. But that's when individuals take it upon themselves to say, hey, I have a vision, you know, or you can recognize someone with a vision, or you're able to accept guidance from someone, and you're able to follow that guidance. And when you follow that guidance can take you to another level. I followed guidance. I was looking for leadership, and that's why, you know, my studies became the way that they did. Gentlemen that I, followed, listened to. It was, to me, I'm still baffled, even though I've, got several, degrees. I've studied theology. I've studied law. I've studied government. I've, studied, I'm a contractor. I do construction. I teach. I can go on and on and on. But it was someone before me that showed me and, encouraged me that, hey, this, you're gonna study, you're gonna learn, you're gonna have a vision for the rest of your life. So that's what I do. So you all who may be at a difficult moment right now, understand, write your vision down. Write a plan out. Stick with it. Visualize it. How did Michael Jordan become such a great basketball? He had a vision. What did that vision do as far as economically for him and his family? And also, what did it do to highlight, black people all over the world? We can go in different directions with the conversation, but we're talking about vision. We're talking about leadership. Even today, Martin King and his vision, and he said he had a dream, and so that was a vision. And it continues to go. It continues to go. That's what you have to do when you're talking about leadership.
Yeah, and so like he was speaking about people who are naturally gifted, people who are of some level of genius, whether it's something specific or well-rounded, it's like, okay, he told y'all about his credentials, the things he has studied, the things that he has done, according to what we consider to be like, I don't want to say like a hierarchy, but you know what it is when people get degrees and certifications in certain things. But it's not just getting these certifications, and that is what it is. It is applying that into your life and being successful with it, whether you use it to make a living, you use it for your community only, you use it for whatever purposes you're using it for personal use. Some people do get degrees for their own personal use, and they apply it to their lives and what they would like to do. So it is what he's talking about, what he's already experienced in his life, and then how I learned from that as well, being his daughter. So having your natural gifts, talents, and abilities. He has to do a lot of writing when it comes to what he does professionally. But me as a kid, it's just kind of like an osmosis thing where you have a parent who's actively working on certain things. I noticed that with my own son as well. You're just already working on something, and then the child just kind of like, bloop, they got it. And so that is something you're constantly working on. So if you're constantly working on something, you're constantly speaking about it, and through osmosis. That's how some genius are created. That is how it is. It can be completely genetic, or it can be through certain avenues of study. So when I was in first grade, I won the cultural arts, a different kind of hero. It was a writing award, and I won honorable mention in the literature portion of the contest. So like I said, this was first grade, and I was writing pieces where I was winning awards for. It was honorable mention, and it was a couple of things. So the theme was a different kind of hero. So this led into what I do with you all now. So before I even get into that, so my dad took his experience to do certain things over different areas of life. So for your own personal use sort of thing, I'm going to show you guys, this is a fashion show that was put on around my 17th birthday. And so it was called the Stars of Memphis Photo Fashion Show. And so with this company, and that's me on the thing, and that was in 2014. Okay, so being able to be in a position where you can do super fun stuff like that, and have like local celebrities, politicians, people of high caliber, entrepreneurs, to come to your event and get his service of photography, and have designers displaying their fashion, have musicians playing their music, and I did like a couple of little jokes, and I did a freestyle and stuff. So being able to do those things on your own accord, with your own network, with your own resources of being able to do things, it speaks a lot of volumes. Go ahead.
Yeah, and basically, as my daughter was sharing, where we fit in, we don't have the same gifts. Everybody doesn't have the same gifts. I always admired her ability when it came to writing and reading, things like that, because as a child, for myself, which our diagnosis as back then was not like it is today, where symptoms of dyslexia may have been one of my challenges, where not being a great speller, not being a great writer, not none of that. So I winded up working extra hard to do what she seems to do effortlessly. And you say, well, how is this? But it just comes to show you that it was a desire of mine, and I often share with her that I couldn't live with not being able to compose an essay. It seemed that you graduate high school and you can't compose an essay, you can't break down a sentence, you can't put together what's a dependent independent clause, you don't know the parts of speeches, you don't know what a conjunction is. Hold up. So it took a little greater effort for me than as I saw her development in writing in 30 minutes to put together well put together poem. I'm like, wow, that's great. I wish I could do that. But I became a good legal writer, and it was just that desire. So the desire is the food that feeds the will. If you have a desire to accomplish something, well, your will produce it. But you have to have that desire. You have to have that vision. You have to have that, the desire to drive somewhat the same. These things play a great part in success, in being the leader, not only of yourself, but being the leader, of your family.
Yep. And it's like, I didn't know my dad could freestyle rap until a few years ago, and it threw me off. I was like, what?
Hey, that's the thing. We're from Memphis, and you probably heard of a lot of what's going on in Memphis. I came through the 80s. A lot of what's tied to the 80s is happening now. So, we weren't strangers to what was going on around the world. Around the country, So, we did, we got out, we, just done it was fun for us. Just like today, rapping is fun for the children. It was fun, or young people in general. But it was fun for us. So, 8-Ball, MJG, and, different guy, Gangster Pat, and so on and so on. Those were the guys back in, when I was coming up. So I spent a little time in, studios hanging around that, at the same time keeping a good understanding of, who I am as a person.
It's awesome. That's really awesome. So Willie said, I learned how to read and improve my vocabulary by reading a toddler book like Cat in the Hat and etc. behind closed doors when I was 14 at the time. And it's very noble because of people. There's this other guy that I've been seeing on TikTok. His name's Oliver. I think Oliver James. He's 30 something, and he reached his goal of reading 100 books last year because he was functionally illiterate. So he could get around and do things, but he was not able to, like he said, know the concept of what grammar is, know the words, know how to form sentences all the way, read those sentences and interpret what's being communicated properly, and then communicate that himself through writing. He was able to speak, but not write and read. And so it's, hey, you do what you got to do, and it's good to complete that aspect of living because we live in the United States. There's English. We have no choice. It's one of the things. So one of the pieces he mentioned earlier about Harriet Tubman. So he took me to go see the movie Harriet when it came out in 2019, and I had just wrote this ebook. So y'all can read it if you want to. It's available on my website. You're able to just get it freely. And I named it very intentionally. It's called Negra 21st Century Black American. It's been 100 years since the Harlem Renaissance. We're in a new enlightening age. So that was back in 1919. At that time period, around that time period, and then you go another decade, then you get into the Great Depression. So it's kind of like here we are again in the 20s, where we have the chance to realize certain things before we get to that next 100-year landmark. So the points I made in it is we are Native Americans too. Why slavery still matters. Black lives didn't matter. America was great. Civil rights. Mental slaves. The new age. So I broke down a few concepts of certain things in the ebook. It's it's broken down in there if you want to read it, but I wanted to read the acknowledgments at the end of it. So I said my acknowledgments. In 2019, my great-grandmother Mary Lewis Gray passed away at over 90 years old. She had 99 children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, plus nieces and nephews. She was born in Brownsville, Tennessee in 1925. So again, that time period of the age she was born. My grandmother, Anna Jean Harden, passed away in 1997, which was the year I was born. Though I had a relationship with my great-grandmother and not my grandmother, I was still able to feel the love of a grandma. Mama, Mary Lewis, worked at a retirement home for 20 years. I wonder if Mama intentionally planned the end of her life based on her experience at her job. I remember the last time I saw her on Mother's Day. She smiled for the first time in a long time. I love you, Mama. And then I said, thanks, Dad. I said, thank you, Mother. Thanks, bro. And I acknowledged my sibling. I said, thank you, Koala. That's a nickname for my other sibling. And then I acknowledged my last sibling and my others. Like, I have 2 brothers and I have 2 sisters. And then I acknowledged my then at the time spouse. I have to update the book. And then I said, thank you, Mr. Man. That's what I used to call my son. And then I said, thank you, Lucky and Lucy. Sometimes y'all will hear about Lucy running around in the background. That's my cat. And I had a dog named Lucky. So that's how she got her name. My dog's name was Lucky. So we named the cat Lucy. And previously, my mom used to have a dog named Grace. So I said, thank you, Grace. Like, she was something. She was something to deal with. That dog was something to deal with. But I can acknowledge, like, a lot of the lessons we learned from having that particular dog in the family. Plus, she had a litter of puppies. That was an experience as well. So I can acknowledge that. And so I also included, like, a few different things about myself, and then the aspect of the fact I didn't acknowledge my great-grandmother for no reason. It was very significant that I wrote that piece at that time, and she spearheaded really how a lot of the legacy goes. So again, that's female leadership in the family. This side of my family hosts family reunions every single year. There was not one year, including COVID, okay, that we did not go without a family reunion as a whole, as a conglomerate, because that is vitally important. My dad's also, what's it called, genealogist? Yeah. So keeping track of the family line and different things of that nature to make sure that if anybody needs to know anything, people can know that. So it's not always, getting your muscles and being like, oh, I'm the leader and I. Sometimes it really is just sitting down and writing.
Yeah. And that's, I'm glad you shared that. My grandmother is her great-grandmother, and her sister, my grandmother's sister, they actually were the ones that helped, well, actually spearheaded the coming together of our family reunion. We are celebrating the 47th annual family reunion, which, you know, in some accounts maybe a little older, but as far as recorded time period, we're looking at 47 years that we celebrate. Well, that's leadership. That leadership there provided me with where I can now do the things that I do. Reaching out to different ones, you know, the mayors and council and commissioners and so on and so forth. Well, it took that leadership there to get me to this point. It took her, you know, grandma sitting down, hey, let me talk to you, you know. And so the female plays such an important role in leadership, that who would build a man so that men can become men.
Okay, so Infinite Hair Goddess said, you look like your dad, so beautiful. And then Zeta Goddess said, for real twinning. And then Infinite Hair Goddess said, strong gene. You can, listen. I appreciate that so much. I really do. And, you know, getting, I'm not sure if I got to meet your grandma's sister. I don't think I met her.
No.
Yeah.
No,
okay.
She had passed. I was actually a child, maybe 7 or something like that. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make those points to let it be known, okay, this is not about, it's not always about being radical, you guys. It's not always about being radical. Even Martin Luther King was talking about the peacefulness of days. Rosa Parks is peaceful. Now, did crazy stuff happen to them? Yes. At the same time, we have to remember there's different levels and different ways and different forms of leadership. So it doesn't always look like some guy, whether in a suit, whether with some sort of gear on to look like he finna go do something, whether in front of a microphone or holding some sort of artifact. Okay, leadership has different forms, and you have to know that as your role as a masculine, as a male, and as a feminine, as a female. And I wanted to share this. This is what I put in my ebook as well. These are Bible scriptures for a great life. Now, remember again, he brought up Christianity as far as the origin of certain things and the way that things operate in today's time. It's not about the religion itself. It's not about what you specifically believe in. You can take principles and information and knowledge from anything. So especially when you're talking about an ancient text such as the Bible, even things like the Quran, things like the Emerald Tablets, you can learn principles from all these things. So I wrote Bible scriptures for a great life. All the songs of Solomon, the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Revelation. Highly recommend. The entire New Testament. I read the entire New Testament. I'm not gonna lie. I have read just about half the Old Testament, but the New Testament, highly recommend. The book of Psalms, the book of Exodus, the book of Nehemiah. Nehemiah talks a lot about building, so he mentioned he's a contractor and had certifications and things in the areas of development, you know, whether you know about real estate development specifically or the ideas and the blueprints of said development. So Nehemiah, Proverbs chapter 31, because here's the secret is people say Proverbs 31 is about women. No, it was a letter to a boy from his mom. So again, it's about men. So ladies can learn from it. But again, that was wisdom from the mother, the matriarch, to the son. That's what the Proverbs 31 woman is. Matthew 5 and 9, that's my favorite scripture. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. I live by that. Sometimes my peace look a little different from what you think peace is. So the book of Job, and we actually did just have a discussion about Job and how it relates to black people in general. And history, the Romans and the Hebrews. So he mentioned the Roman Empire. So when you learn about these things from the different perspectives, I'm going to get to y'all's comments in a minute. I see y'all. From the different perspectives of whether you see the victor, the one who was conquered, you see the different perspectives. And then once you become a traveled person and you can really see the perspective, not just read a book from someone else's point of view, not a biography, but you can actually see somebody's journals in the museum. The journals in the museums may not be available in regular text in the United States. But you go to the museum, you see the statues, you see the artifacts, and those are readily available in those geographical locations. They may not even have pictures on the internet. So you have to realize those things. Okay, let me see. Zay said, okay, so can he repeat that last part about the women and men? Infinite Hair Goddess said, there are many leadership roles. Zay said, leadership to me really looks like talking what you know and being able to organize a group of people with a common goal to pursue the mission. Infinite Hair Goddess said, that's why we all can be leading, because there are so many roles and different perspectives. That's why we should be in a more unity style community. Right. All right. So she did ask you to repeat, she said, repeat the last part about the women and men. I don't know exactly which context she's talking about because you touched on a few points, but yeah.
I was sharing if maybe this is about, you know, how, you know, what my grandmother had done, and when in doing that, my mother and grandmother, the role that they actually played in my life, I said that was leadership, because even though as a boy, it was that strong female leadership that, you know, put me on the track that I should, you know, be on, something that I could hold on to. Even though I had, you know, coaches and mentors and different ones, it was always that aspect where the female was able to reach me, you know. The female for the male is always a source of, and this, I would say from my coming up, you know, I could always go to my mother, I could always go to my grandmother with heartfelt situations, you know. Whereas, you know, even though my coaches and, you know, fathers, you know, mentors, you know, were there, it was always, you know, the presence of the female that even shaped our family. And I was sharing how my grandmother and her sister, you know, through their effort, brought together the family in our family reunion, and we got, you know, strong men in that, but it was the female that held it down for so many years, you know. Even though I play a greater role today, where did I get it from? You know, who sat and talked to me? Who told me the history of our family? You know, it was my grandmother, and my mother before she passed. But you know, as I got older, my grandmother was still around. So that's very important. If we go into it, even if we looked at the scriptures and we looked in Genesis, and I don't, you know, I guess study as much to recall different verses off the top of my head, but I can repeat certain things, and there's so many people say, well, it don't mean that, it don't mean that. But if I just read what it says in the beginning, God created man in his image and his likeness, created he them, male and female, and he called their name Adam. You say, well, it don't mean that, it don't mean, well, that's what it says. You know, it's what it is. Is God a man? Is God a woman? Is God a male? Is God a female? How about if God both? You know, so you know, it's to me, you know, it's a thing of, hey, you know, you have to dig into the scriptures, you know, different spiritual writings, and you have to come, you know, the interpretation, you know, you would develop your own interpretation if you actually, you know, went into it, dove into it yourself. So this thing of the separation of man being greater than woman, or woman being greater than man, is really non-existent to me.
That makes sense, and that even goes along with this comment from Infinite Hair Goddess. She said matriarch energy can have a bigger influence because of the strength and emotion are being used at the same time, and then she said love. So it's recognizing the power of both.
Both, cause we get into this thing of, we get to let's talk about philosophy, the so-called great philosophers, Aristotle, Socrates, Plato. These are kind of familiar names that we know. There's plenty more philosophers, but for those that we know, why was this discussion of the law of opposites, the positives, the negatives, the up and down, the big and little? Why is there a philosophy of opposites, and why does it take opposites in order to generate a oneness? Because you can't have up without a down. You can't have the positive without the negative. So is the positive and the negative one, or is the positive and the negative two?
Something to think about, for sure. Zay said, yes, love this insight. I missed some of it because I got a call, but I heard a good bit. That's awesome. Love hearing. She's actually one of the goddesses who wrote the essay I was telling you about. Okay. And so I wanted to read this excerpt. I know it's been good engagement. I love you guys so much. I wanted to read this other excerpt from my ebook, and then if y'all have any final questions, we can go ahead and wrap it up. We've been on here for roughly an hour. So, in the part where I spoke on civil rights, I wasn't speaking too much on what was going on in that time. I was not there. This is my own autobiography. I was speaking on my experience. So, civil rights, for some reason, black rights are referred to as civil rights. That was from my comprehension at the time. From my understanding, there wasn't anything civil about our treatment in this country. That was me being kind of sarcastic. Again, my piece looks a little bit different than most people. So, though we are given the same freedoms as we'll say Caucasian Americans, we still had extraordinary struggles. Since I was born in the late 90s, I didn't experience the same type of racism or prejudice that my parents did. My dad, born in the late 1960s, my mom, born in 1970, their experiences in Memphis, Tennessee primarily revolved around the south and northern areas of the city. My experience was all over the place. I was born in Raleigh, grew up in North Haven, went to school in Germantown, and went to church in Fraser, and then eventually that moved to Raleigh. With that age and location difference, I was exposed to a much different life than my parents. I used to resent moving around the city all the time in my teens, but I learned to appreciate the travels. I learned a lot about people in that process. I learned that being homeless isn't the worst thing and being rich isn't the best thing. This really helped shape my view of business and investment tactics. My lesson was never do something if money is the only reward. Therefore, I ensured that my businesses would have headquarters in Memphis, Tennessee, primarily. I said only, but primarily. Again, I wrote this in 2019. So yeah, being able to put together my experiences from the perspective of my father and his family and my mother and her family, it helped to shape things. And I mentioned the church too. So my grandmother, my great-grandmother, his grandmother that we mentioned earlier, she was part of the founding team of the church that she was a part of. So while we know that certain things are, the narratives of it may not be as favorable, you have to recognize back in the day, church was different. It was really a good part of the community. It wasn't what it is now, where it still holds leadership parts of the community, but it was very, very different, where you could go up to the church and receive, of course, prayer, spiritual guidance, spiritual assistance. The religious system in itself was, there were churches who were part of the Underground Railroad. So again, going back to Harriet Tubman, you have churches who were part of the liberation. A lot of people, their first thing that they could read was the Bible. So that was helping in the education and the evolution of the Afro-American once slavery was abolished and everything like that. So yeah, that's part of my ebook. Again, y'all can read it if you would like to. It's on my website directly on there. Infinite Hair Goddess said, I love it because I look at it that way. The nicest person can be the most meanest person, and people act like that's a shock, but things like that shouldn't be. Light and dark to me are the same things. I love paradox. Yeah. Oh, Zay said, which makes sense. Why wouldn't a church help out? Exactly. But yep. So if y'all don't have any more questions, and like, I love the input from the ladies. I love when the ladies come in because we could chat it up. We really can. So, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. But again, this was Real Talk with my dad.
I would like to thank you for inviting me. You know, Tiara invited me. She said, "Would you come on?" I said, "Well, you know, I don't normally, you know, do the public type. You know, I've been there, kind of, you know, like to, you know, do what I do and keep it right there. But I said I'll come on and just share, you know, some points of views from the old school."
I appreciate that so much. And to get, like, literally, you know, if you do your digging, you'll see him in snapshots and all type of stuff with all these other people. And it's one of them things where it's like you'll read a history book and be like, hey, I seen him on the... It's one of them. Soul Glare 144 said y'all had the same smile, bro. we could take you back to the Memphis jokes with that one, but I'm not even finna. V, that nigga said bless. For sure. Alright, well, y'all have a great evening. And if anything, if people watch the replay and y'all still have some questions, you know what I will do for my own. If you leave the comments, I will go back and ask him, and then I'll reply to your comment, and we can do it that way. He does have his business, so it's like I wouldn't imagine y'all will go follow the business pages and start asking him questions. You can just leave it here, and then we can do it like that. So, yeah. All right, you guys. Well, I will see you in the next one. Bye, Rainicorns. We're going to talk about how my great-grandfather was killed by Memphis police officers back in the 1930s. And he also served in the army. So this was an extra offense as to why this is so important to talk about different things that happened in the past within our lineages and in the United States. So let's get into it. It's coming out blurry again. So we're just gonna roll with it. I'll show you what I can. Okay, I am attempting to do this stream with the work that has been done by a university to share with my family about everything that happened. However, the evidence of the case is not coming out clear on camera, so we're just gonna have to go with it. Okay, Powell's Bully Kendall said mine too. Yeah. So let me see what I can share that might be kind of clear. Okay, so that one's coming out clear. Okay, there's some that are clear, some that are choosing to be blurry, so we got this, you guys. I'm just looking through here a little bit just to see. Okay, so to start off with this document, this is a response letter from the president's office. After my great-grandfather was killed, his brother, James, then sent a letter to the president of the United States at the time, and that was Franklin D. Roosevelt. So my great-grandfather, Philip Hatley, he was chased in his home by Memphis police officers. He was chased from the inside of his home to the backyard. And then they shot him to death. So, his brother, my great-great-uncle, essentially, he wrote a letter to the president's office to ask for assistance. His response was essentially that the president's office was not able to do anything specifically, and to seek the aid of the local government. This is his original letter. And what is extremely significant about my particular bloodline is I come from a lineage of intellects. My great-grandfather and their family were descendants of freed slaves. So with that being said, everyone was registered to vote. Like I mentioned before, the army was a part of that lifestyle at that particular time. So he was drafted to the army, he served the country, and he was educated. His brother was also educated. So as you can see, he's writing in cursive. Being a literate individual from a lineage of slaves is a huge deal when it comes to the way that it was actually illegal for slaves to be able to be literate. So this is ending off the letter. And as you can see at the bottom, it is signed James Hatley. And yes, if you're unaware, my last name is Hatley. And this is 4 generations back from me. And I have a son, so 5 generations back. This is the letter typed that was filed in the system for the United States. But this is his letter when he reached out. So if I'm not mistaken right here, that's a little blurry just because the print is so small. When you remember things like white pages and yellow pages, and you have census records, so as far as being registered to vote, serving in the army, and being a functioning member of society, having a job, people were keeping track of the different citizens in those time periods, and as they do now. You know, this is just how it was recorded. Things are digital now, so things were documented this way back then. Okay. That's his voter registration card. And this is his army documentation of when he served and when he was drafted. And this is information about the cemetery where he's buried. So again, that's a copy from a book. Things are digital nowadays, so that's the way that the log was set up for his time. So now I'm going to show you a variety of different news articles that were written in that time period. So this headline says, ex-officers indicted for slaying of Negro. I think that's indicted, so my mistake for mispronouncing. And even the verbiage at that time period, it was Negro. We had coloreds, we've had all sorts of different terminologies to describe our people. And so at that time period, it was Negro. Two Memphis policemen are jailed for murder. I think that says Melroy still in jail, unable to make bond. That's one of the officers' names, if I'm not mistaken. Former officer tells story of death fight with Negro in his murder trial defense. Again, for reference, my great-grandfather was at home with his family when this happened. Former officer gives his version of fight. He was at home, and there was no search warrant. Brodens also freed in slaying of Negro. Two policemen held on murder charges after slaying Negro. And just, again, for reference, he served in the Army, so not previous member of the armed forces. Negro. Okay, I think the rest of these may be blurry. Let me make sure. Okay. Boy to ask indictment. Trial of policemen to open tomorrow. Special panel called to hear slaying case. I would assume murder case, but terminologies back then, slaying case. This was a national situation. It wasn't just articles written in the Commercial Appeal, which is a popular Memphis newspaper still alive today. This made headlines in many other cities and many other states in the United States at that time period. So upwards going to Chicago and then other surrounding cities in the state of Tennessee like Chattanooga. It says jury picking delays police murder trial. It's still a little blurry, but I was able to make that one out. Okay, it cleared up. But yes, this is my ancestry. This is a multi-generational situation. And I say that because As some of you may remember, we had a real talk with Dad a few months ago, where my dad shared when he was around my age, he was also involved in different organizations and movements to improve the livelihood of Afro Americans. With that being said, we were not sure about what happened with my great-grandfather, his grandfather. He only had a few details of what was going on during that time period, and he sought out so much information and so much resources, so many different connections to be able to find the answers to his questions. Where do I come in? Well, with my dad's strive for everything that he was doing back in that time period, which was around the time, I can't even say around the time I was born. He dealt with a different situation around the time I was born. So roughly a decade before I was born, 5 to 10 years prior, it was more so centered around, faith, still spirituality in a sense, but predominantly faith outside of traditional aspects of what slaves were taught to be religion. So he joined different organizations and has worked with them, if I'm being honest, to this day, to be able to achieve different accomplishments for our people. And so with that being said as well, it's very much centered around business and providing infrastructure and innovation. I come in on the more spiritual aspect where I would see the third dimensional actions. I would see the physical route taken in order to accomplish certain goals. While they were very necessary and very useful, there was always something missing. There was always something that was not adding up. There was always something going on that we were unaware of and did not know about. So on top of the fact that our family made headlines around the entire nation, the city of Memphis, the community in it, raised around $1,000 in order to help my family within this situation. That's a beautiful thing. At the same time, you all saw the letter that was written to the President of the United States. So the fact that a letter of that stature was written to the President of the United States, and essentially nothing was done about it from the national federal aspect of the country, and not the local government, local community gathered together to raise money for my family for whatever was necessary at that time period. Again, mind you, my great-grandfather served in the Army. Now, I know that it wasn't him dying in the force. It wasn't him passing away while in battle. At the same time, having honor for those who have served our country just seems like something that is common knowledge and an automatic green light. We all know that at that time, Jim Crow era, the freeing of slaves and everything around that sort, we were not being treated fairly. At all. To serve in the military, register to vote, and be an educated individual, and have a job was not enough. It was not enough to prevent harassment from law enforcement. The Army is part of law enforcement. There are so many Afro-American families, whether descendants of slaves or not, because not every single Black person in the United States is a descendant from slavery. There are so many of us who will never have their stories told in a way that my family's story was able to be told, and that is why I do the work that I do. In a spiritual sense, if you all are familiar with my YouTube channel, Sovereign Empress, which is my spiritual alias in English, I do what are called heritage origin tarot readings and ancestral Caucasian connection tarot readings. I do ancestral work intentionally to provide answers for whatever is necessary that is unknown. So while my father did know that his great-grandfather was a member of the Army and also was killed by Memphis law enforcement, he was unaware of certain details. Our family did not know the extent of what happened. This was not a vocal tale that different members of the family would tell, as a lot of our family members passed away while everyone was young. That situation happened with my great-grandfather when his son was quite young. I don't want to missay the age, but if I'm not mistaken, younger than 10 years old. And that cycle continued with our fathers in that particular lineage dying while the children are very, very young. So that time of raising the children and spending time with their youth, family bonding, it was stripped away. It wasn't pure abandonment. It was someone being involved unlawfully and stripping the family down. This is why I do the work that I do. Instead of going years and years with unanswered questions, our family is now able to have a sense of rest, a sense of ease. That's also coming with some recognition from the city of Memphis nowadays, and that's kind of cool too. This presentation was presented in front of several universities, and a research team is continuing to do work on our behalf. That part's pretty cool. On my end, I've been able to achieve the spiritual connection for allowing certain things to align, for our family to get answers. That's more than anything anyone could ask for when it comes to people like us. People like us, you ask? Those who are the descendants of slaves, who were unfairly thrown into a system that was built to destroy us. We built the system so that they can hurt us with the very system that we built. The stigma of absent father households, the stigma of lazy fathers, the stigma of lazy black men, the stigma of men who have no ambition in life, the stigma of uneducated black men. Uneducated where? My father alone has multiple degrees. I can't even tell you how many. Almost every couple of years I find out he has another degree somewhere. I don't mean that in a sedity and even somewhat sarcastic way. I grew up knowing that he had an associate's degree as a paralegal. I knew that growing up. I just now recently found out he had other law degrees and other degrees in different aspects of business. I knew he knew about business. I did not know he had degrees in business. I was unaware of that until recently. I was actually a teenager while he was getting his master's degree, if I'm not mistaken. My father has always worked. I didn't grow up with my dad having a job, but he always worked. You all see me on my platform communicating about entrepreneurship because that's the way I grew up. I grew up traveling to different states, different cities, doing work with my dad. I grew up with my dad not in the home because he was on the road working. I grew up getting to meet different entrepreneurs, going to network meetings because my parents just do that. My dad recently got a job. In the past few years of my existence, I've never seen him have a job before. And what's that job? a curated job based on his experience as an entrepreneur. So is it really a job only because he has to clock in? Otherwise, he's teaching people how to do what he got certified in. That's why it's so important to do ancestral work on a spiritual level and on a literal level. Asking questions in your family, doing whatever online research, and then anything can happen where a university research team reaches out to you and says, hey, I see that you're these people. Would you like to help us help you? That's exactly what happened with us. A miracle, right? It's important to do these aspects of. People like to use certain words and make them mean certain things. Well, I'm just going to play around with things. Doing the proper root and shadow work. Root work on your roots, on your family tree. Shadow work on your lineage. Figuring out, taking accountability, and accepting whatever happened. There were so many things out of our control. And it's not for us to sit and be victims. Despite everything, our family has always held the standard. Get your education. Even a situation as serious as this didn't stop that. I never got to meet my grandfather. I never got to meet any of my grandmothers. Does that make me stop being smart, reading books, figuring out things on my own? Not at all. I love learning so much that I'm teaching my son and not enrolling him into public school. Because what's the point? I have 2 parents that are educators in the public school system. And they both have master's degrees. I think I'm good. One thing that was always implemented by both my parents: get educated, stay educated, continue to learn. And also work for yourself, but that's a different aspect of things. Now that we are where we are currently, it's time to do more than just heal. I think a lot of us have done a lot of healing. And I'm here as an example of what healing can do for you. Intentionally staying centered and grounded, and intentionally being in a good headspace and providing that aura atmosphere around your family members, around your associates, is what attracts situations like these for clarity. All that's desired is clarity and fairness. That's all. I'm going to read some of these comments, and then if there's any questions, I will answer them, and then I'll go. Okay. Super Level said, where you been? Give me a reading, please. Sports Guy Elise said, Philip Hatley with the fist. Yeah. Super Level said, the system is not good. That's what it does. Bills then break you. Oh, I'm assuming you mean builds, not bills. Life is all about making your own family and take yourself away from the system, out in nature, eat what you plant and raise. Talking is not going to make a difference. You know what I'm talking about. I'll be right back. Don't leave, please. Killer Breezy, KDG, Peace Goddess, said, I'm going to need a reading on my ancestors. Okay, so that's awesome. The thing is, I don't do personal readings. If I'm called to, I will. So what I do is, I'll reiterate, on my spiritual channel, Ancestry, on my spiritual channel, Sovereign Empress, I do Ancestral Caucasian Connection. And for our people, I do Heritage Origin Tarot readings. So I haven't done one of those in a minute. I had to finish up the Caucasian ones just to get certain things out the way. And so I do plan on going back to doing the Heritage Origin Tarot readings, where they're collective readings. And it's putting pieces together and putting puzzle pieces together for our different individual situations, and I provide solutions that can help everybody in different ways. So as far as individual readings, if I am called to do so, you can DM me and I'll just see what I'm given at that time period, because like I don't charge for them. You can donate if you want to. It's just one of them type of things where I don't have a business for that, and I can't like make myself do a reading for anybody. It's just one of those things. But yes, it's a beautiful thing to get readings on situations like those, because I do recognize that people do use spiritual work and tarot for things outside of being productive. And so asking for readings and getting readings on scenarios such as your ancestry, your lineage, your bloodline, answering any unanswered questions, that's a beautiful thing. So if I'm called to, I will. If not, it's one of those things where I'm going to do collective readings on my channel. Sports Guy Lee said, do you know what age he was when he died? Was he 30 something? Because if I'm not mistaken, he was born 1896. If I'm correct that he was born in 1896, I'll have to look at his thing. He was 43. So that's if I'm correct. So 43 years old, being stripped away from his family. Okay. So not 43, he'd be 45 if I have this right. Yeah. Because the thing's blurry, so I'm making sure that this is his date of birth. So if this is his date of birth, he was born in 1894. But yeah, it's just the thing being blurry. That's it looks like it says date of birth though. Kayla Breezy KDG said, I've been researching my ancestors for 15 years. I've gathered so much information. Now I have answers. That is beautiful. And that's what it is, right? So earlier I was talking about how my dad, he had been doing that work as well for our family. And then all of a sudden, some researchers contacted him and my cousin. And they have, okay, so now that I'm thinking about it, I'm going to go ahead and connect with you on that level, because if you have some information from the Jim Crow era specifically, they can definitely get some more answers and get some more research, whatever they have already done, because they've already been doing research on our people. So they may have some stuff for you already, and if not, they can add you to the presentation. Let me read the email that I got. Okay. Okay. It says, Dear Hatley family, thank you again for attending my presentation and offering your kind comments. I am truly humbled that my work was able to shed light on what happened to Philip Hatley. I've attached the various documents and records that I found during my research. I've also attached my presentation slides. Please feel free to share these widely with any of your children or relatives. Lastly, Professor Olivia Strange and Lydia Beale with CRRJ will be reaching out shortly to begin discussing a marker or memorial for Philip Hatley. Thank you again. It has been a very special experience to learn about your grandfather, and I hope that CRRJ's work can continue helping with the healing process. Sincerely, Elena. And that email is from Miss Curran at Northeastern University School of Law. So yeah, that's Northeastern doing the research with CRRJ. That's what their organization is called. So if you want to look them up, go ahead and do that. And of course you can hit me up and I'll give you whatever extra information I can provide. Because they're doing an entire sweep of what happened during the Jim Crow era specifically. And so by getting that information, that'll tie into other information going back to slavery and then afterward during the civil rights era. Killer Breezy said, thank you for sharing and thank you, Goddess, for sure. Much gratitude for tuning in and even presenting that, because a lot of people need to realize how vital and important it is not just to, we'll be honest, gossip about family members. It's important to talk about family members and to get information for things such as these. And it's important for those of us who are more spiritual to do the work spiritually to clear out whatever resentment we may have, to clear out whatever hatred we may have, to clear out whatever sadness and grief we may have in order to receive. My great-grandfather was killed by white police officers. That presentation was put together by white people. If my family had kept resentment toward white people, we would not have been receptive to the healing process that is being presented. That's why these types of situations are so important. Resentment toward white people is not going to help us achieve anything. It's a different time. We're in a different place. And my family's information has now been shared in multiple countries. We were on the Zoom meeting, and I forgot what the other country was, but I heard somebody with an accent. So I don't know if he was Irish or German. It was something. I'm like, okay. And so it's really cool. We're getting it done. It's over with. You know what I'm saying? The struggle is over. One of the examples, Tyrese Nichols, he recently went through a situation in the city of Memphis a few years ago. Okay, it's the end of stuff like that. It's the end. It's the end, no more. People will still have their prejudices. That's not going to prevent people from being able to have opportunities. And it's definitely not going to stop anyone's education. It's not going to stop anybody from starting their own business. It's not going to stop anybody from starting and continuing their own family. All right. So yeah, I appreciate y'all listening. I will be sharing this, of course, here on my Instagram page, and I will be sharing it on my YouTube channel as well. And we're going to continue doing this work until we're all clear and have clarity on everything that has happened to our bloodlines and our families in this country and beyond that. There goes Celestial. So those of us who are more cosmic with it, we're going to figure out the stuff about our spiritual families too. All right. Bye, guys. I will see you in the next one.